I remember the exact moment the room went quiet, not when my grandmother handed us the checks, not when my father laughed in her face, but the second the bank manager locked the door the next morning and looked at me like I was holding a live grenade. His hands were shaking. Mine weren't. He leaned in close, his voice barely a whisper, and said, "Ma'am, this isn't fake." In that instant, every laugh from the night before echoed in my head like gunfire. My father's voice, my mother's sneer, my sister's camera recording it all. They thought it was a joke. I didn't. And by the time they realized what they had thrown away, it was already too late. My name is Captain Evelyn Ross, United States Army, Logistics Corps. I've spent the last 11 years moving supplies through war zones where one wrong calculation gets people killed. I don't scare easily. I don't react quickly. I observe. I assess. And I wait. That Thanksgiving, I wasn't home as a daughter. I was home as a witness. Grandma Eleanor's house sat at the end of a gravel road in Pine Hollow, the kind of place people forget exists unless they grew up there. The air smelled like roasted turkey cinnamon and old wood smoke, the kind that seeps into your clothes and stays there long after you leave. It should have felt warm. It didn't. I stood by the window, hands clasped behind my back posture, locked into a parade rest I hadn't been able to shake since my first deployment. Outside, the wind cut through the trees like a blade. Inside, the temperature dropped for entirely different reasons. My father, Thomas Ross, came in first like he owned the place. He didn't knock. He never did. He kicked the mud off his boots right onto the hardwood floor my grandmother had spent decades keeping spotless. No apology, no greeting. Just a grunt as he claimed the head of the table. "Drive was hell," he muttered, already pouring himself a drink like it was his house. My mother followed, wrapped in a coat that cost more than Grandma probably spent in a year. She glanced around with that tight smile she used when she wanted to insult something without saying it directly. "Well, it's cozy," she said, which in her language meant outdated small beneath her. My older brother Mark came next, tossing his keys onto the table hard enough to rattle the dishes. "Hey, Ev," he said without looking at me. "My truck's making that noise again. You can take a look tomorrow, right?" To him, I wasn't a captain, I was free labor. Then came Lily, my younger sister, already filming before she even stepped fully inside. Her phone was angled just right, catching the lighting, the table, the rustic aesthetic she loved showing off to strangers online. "Guys, look at this," she whispered into the camera, her voice suddenly higher, brighter. "Thanksgiving at Grandma's. Total vintage vibes." Vintage. Like it was a museum piece, like Grandma wasn't standing 3 feet away hearing every word. Dinner started the way it always did, with tension thick enough to choke on. The food was good, it always was, but no one said thank you. My father complained the turkey was dry before he even finished his first bite. My mother made a comment about portion sizes. Mark asked me again about his truck. Lily kept checking her phone, smiling at people who weren't in the room. I sat there, spine straight, hands steady, listening. In Afghanistan, I once shared a canteen with a man who had nothing left but the clothes on his back. He offered it without hesitation. At that table, surrounded by people who shared my blood, everything came with a price. Grandma didn't speak much during dinner. She moved quietly, refilling plates, clearing dishes, her yellow sweater soft against the dim light. But I knew that look in her eyes. I'd seen it before in commanders right before they made a decision that would change everything. When the plates were cleared, she didn't sit back down. She walked to the old wooden cabinet by the wall and opened it slowly like she had all the time in the world. The room went quiet, but not out of respect. It was the kind of silence predators have when they sense something coming. She turned back toward us, holding 5 envelopes. "Just a little something," she said, her voice calm, steady. She placed one in front of each of us. My father tore his open immediately. He always needed to be first. His eyes scanned the paper, and for a split second something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe even hope. Then it twisted into something ugly. "What the hell is this?" he barked, slamming the check down on the table. $10,000. You think this is funny?" Mark leaned over, grabbed his envelope, and laughed as soon as he saw it. "There's no way this is real," he said, crumpling it slightly between his fingers. "You don't have this kind of money." My mother didn't even try to hide her disdain. She held the check up like it was something dirty. "Honestly, Eleanor," she said, her voice sharp, "we're past these little games." Lily was already filming. Wait, she said, angling her phone. "This is actually kind of hilarious." She zoomed in on the check, the numbers clear on the screen. Grandma just gave us all fake checks for 10 grand. Grandma smiled. It wasn't warm, it wasn't apologetic, it was precise. "They are fake," she said simply. The room exploded in laughter. My father leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "I knew it," he said, pointing at her. "You had me for a second there. Jesus, Ma, you really need to stop this nonsense. Mark tossed his check onto the table. Yeah, good one, he said. Real funny. My mother folded hers in half with a crisp, deliberate motion. You shouldn't joke about money like this, she added. It's in poor taste. Lily went a step further. She held hers up to the camera, grinning. All right, guys, watch this. She dropped it into the fireplace, the paper catching almost instantly, the edges curling as the flames swallowed it. Fake money deserves a dramatic exit. Hearts flooded her screen. I didn't laugh. I looked down at the check in my hands. The paper felt heavier than it should have. The ink was clean, precise. I ran my thumb along the edge, smoothing out a slight crease. It didn't matter if it was fake. It mattered that she gave it to me. I folded it carefully and slipped it into the inner pocket of my jacket right beneath the ribbons on my uniform. Thank you, Grandma, I said. My voice didn't shake, it never does. The laughter around me shifted, turning sharp. My father smirked. Look at that, he said. Always the obedient one. Still playing soldier, huh? It's paper, Evelyn. Trash. Don't act like it means something. I met his eyes, but I didn't respond. Across the room, Grandma held my gaze for a fraction of a second. Then she gave a small nod. Only once she said quietly. No one else seemed to hear it. But I did. Later that night, I stepped outside into the cold. The air hit my lungs like ice, sharp and clean. I stood there for a moment, listening to the wind move through the trees, letting the noise inside the house fade into the background. My hand moved to my chest, feeling the outline of the folded check through the fabric. Behind me, I could still hear them laughing. By morning, they wouldn't be laughing at all. The morning after Thanksgiving in Pine Hollow always feels like the aftermath of something too quiet, too gray, like the town itself is nursing a hangover it didn't ask for. The roads were slick with a thin layer of ice, and the sky hung low, heavy with the kind of clouds that never quite commit to snow. I was up before sunrise. Sleep had been shallow, tactical. In the army, you learn how to rest without ever fully powering down. My mind had been running scenarios all night, replaying the dinner, isolating variables, testing assumptions. The check, her tone, that one sentence only once. That wasn't casual. That was instruction. I dressed without thinking, movements efficient and automatic. Dark jeans, boots, my jacket, the same one with the check tucked inside. I didn't unfold it. Not yet. Some things you don't handle until you're ready to confirm what they are. The drive into town took 12 minutes. I knew every turn, every dip in the road. Pine Hollow hadn't changed in decades, and it probably never would. The bank sat on the corner of Main and Alder, a brick building that looked older than the town itself. First National, one branch, one manager. The kind of place where people still use your name instead of your account number. I parked out front and sat for a second, engine idling. Breathe in, breathe out. Then I killed the engine and stepped out into the cold. Inside, the air was stale, overworked heat pushing against the chill that followed me in. A fake Christmas wreath hung crooked behind the counter. A plastic tree in the corner dropped silver needles onto a worn carpet that had seen too many winters. There were two tellers. Both looked up when I walked in. Morning, Evelyn, one of them said. Karen? She'd known me since I was a kid. Morning, I replied. I didn't linger. I walked straight to the counter and slid the folded check across the polished surface. I need this verified, I said. Karen glanced down, still smiling. Then she saw the amount. The smile faded just slightly. Give me 1 second, she said, her tone shifting into something more careful. She didn't call a teller supervisor. She didn't run it through the usual scanner. Instead, she picked it up with both hands like it required more attention than a normal transaction. I'm going to get Mr. Halverson, she added. That was the first flag. Benedict Halverson had been managing this branch for over 20 years. He didn't come out for routine checks. He didn't come out for anything under 6 figures, and even then only if something was off. I stood there, hands resting lightly on the counter, eyes tracking the back office door as Karen disappeared through it. 30 seconds passed. Then the door opened. Halverson didn't walk out. He came out fast. His tie was slightly off-center. His shirt sleeves weren't buttoned all the way. For a man who built his life on precision and predictability, that alone told me something was wrong. Captain Ross, he said, forcing a professional tone that didn't quite land. Would you come with me, please? Not ma'am, not Evelyn, formal, controlled. Of course, I said. I followed him past the counter, past the glass-walled offices into the back. His office door was already open. He stepped inside first, then held it for me. The moment I entered, he closed it behind us. Then he locked it. The click of the deadbolt was sharp, final. He didn't sit right away. He moved to the blinds and pulled them halfway shut, cutting off the view from the hallway. Only then did he turn back to me. Please, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I sat, back straight, hands on my thighs, waiting. He remained standing for a moment, staring at the check lying on his desk like it might move on its own. Then he finally sat down, but not all the way back, just on the edge of the chair like he was ready to stand again at any second. His fingers hovered over the paper before he picked it up. "Where did you get this?" he asked. His voice was low, not accusatory, careful. "A gift," I replied, "from my grandmother, last night." He exhaled slowly like he'd been holding that breath since Karen brought it in. "Eleanor Ross," he said more to himself than to me. "Yes." He adjusted his glasses, leaned closer to the check, and examined it again. Signature routing number watermark. His hand trembled just slightly. I watched everything. Every micro-expression, every delay. In the field, hesitation can tell you more than action. Finally, he set the check down. "Captain Ross," he said, choosing each word with precision, "I need you to listen carefully." I didn't move. He leaned forward, lowering his voice to almost a whisper. "This check is not fake." The room went still. Not dramatic, not explosive, just a shift like the ground beneath you adjusting a few inches without warning. I didn't react outwardly, I never do. "Explain," I said. He nodded once as if he expected that response. He turned his monitor toward me and typed quickly, pulling up an account interface I wasn't meant to see. "This account," he said, pointing, "is active, verified, fully funded." I scanned the numbers. $10,000 was nothing in that context. It wasn't even a fraction. "Who owns it?" I asked. He hesitated. "Technically," he said, "it's held under a series of trusts and holding structures, but the controlling name, ultimately, traces back to your grandmother." I leaned back, slightly processing. That didn't match the data I had. Grandma lived on a fixed income, small house, old car, coupons in the kitchen drawer. I had covered her medical expenses more than once because insurance didn't stretch far enough. This didn't fit. "How much?" I asked. He swallowed. "Liquid," he said. "This specific account is just one of several. Combined accessible funds, north of 8 million. 8 million. My family had laughed at 10,000. Burned it, crumpled it, mocked it. I felt something shift in my chest, not shock, not excitement, clarity. This wasn't generosity. This was filtration. "A test," I said quietly. Halverson looked at me sharply. "I believe so," he replied. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a blue folder thicker than anything I'd seen in a local branch office. He placed it on the desk, but didn't open it. "She came in 3 weeks ago," he said. "Sat exactly where you're sitting. Asked for a series of checks to be issued, identical amounts, identical formatting." 5 of them, I said. "Yes." "And she told you what would happen." He gave a tight, humorless nod. "She said most of them wouldn't make it back to this building." Silence settled between us. I thought about the fireplace. The way the paper curled, the way Lily smiled while it burned. Irrecoverable. I reached forward, picked up the check, and folded it once more along the crease I had smoothed the night before. "Do not flag this account," I said. It wasn't a request. He blinked, then nodded. "Understood." "Do not contact any other listed recipients," I added. "That may be difficult," he admitted. "The system." "Delay it," I said, "as long as you can." He studied me for a second, then nodded again. "I can hold it for a few hours, maybe longer." "That's enough." I stood. He stood with me almost automatically. "Captain Ross," he said, voice tightening slightly, "if this escalates." "It will," I replied. I slipped the check back into my jacket. "Then you should be prepared," he said. I paused at the door, hand on the handle. "I already am." When I stepped back into the lobby, the air felt different. Thicker, charged. Karen glanced up at me, searching my face for something, relief, confusion, anything she could read. I gave her nothing. Outside, the cold hit harder. I made it to my truck, opened the door, and slid into the driver's seat. The engine turned over with a low growl. Heat wouldn't come for another minute. My phone buzzed. Once. Then again. Then it didn't stop. I looked down. Missed calls, messages stacking on top of each other, family group chat lighting up like a warning flare. They knew. Or at least they were starting to. I set the phone face down on the console. Noise discipline. In the desert, unnecessary communication gets you killed. Back home, it just tells people where you are. I put the truck in gear and pulled out onto the road. Behind me, the bank stood quiet and unchanged. Ahead of me, the war was just beginning. The phone didn't stop vibrating. It rattled against the plastic console like something alive, like it was trying to claw its way into my hands. I kept my eyes on the road, both hands steady on the wheel, the truck cutting through the thin sheet of ice that glazed the county road. Noise discipline. In a convoy, you don't answer every signal. You filter, you prioritize, you survive. Back home, the rules weren't much different. I let it ring. By the time I reached the edge of Pine Hollow, the screen lit up again, this time with my father's name. Thomas Ross. I watched it for half a second. Then I declined the call. The phone buzzed harder, like it didn't agree with that decision. Another call followed immediately, then another, then a text. Pick up the damn phone. I didn't. I drove straight past the turnoff that led back to the highway and headed in the opposite direction back toward Grandma's house. The air felt different now, heavier, like the whole town had shifted a few degrees off balance. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, I saw the tracks before I saw the trucks. 2 sets, fresh. One of them I recognized immediately, my father's Ford. The other was Mark's. They'd moved fast. Faster than I expected. I killed the engine and stepped out. The cold hit hard, sharp against my face, but it didn't slow me down. I crossed the yard in long strides, boots crunching against the gravel. Before I reached the porch, I heard it. My father's voice. Loud, aggressive, not the controlled tone he used in public. This was the version he saved for Family Raw, entitled, "Convinced the World Owed Him Something." "Open the door, Ma," he shouted, his fist slamming against the wood. "I know you're in there." Another bang, harder. "Don't play games with me." I took the steps 2 at a time and reached the porch just as he drew his arm back again. "Step away from the door," I said. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. He turned, eyes locking onto mine. For a split second, something flickered there, surprise, maybe even calculation. Then it hardened into anger. "There you are," he snapped. "What the hell did you do?" "Nothing," I said. "What did you do?" Mark appeared from the side of the house, breath fogging in the cold, his eyes darting like he was casing the place. "She's probably hiding something," he muttered. "We should check the back." "You're not going anywhere near this house," I said, stepping forward just enough to block his line. He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Relax, Captain. This is family business." "No," I replied evenly. "This is her house." My father scoffed. "Don't start that righteous crap with me. You think you're better than us because you kept that piece of paper." "It wasn't paper," I said. His jaw tightened. "Don't," he warned. "Don't you dare act like you knew something we didn't." I didn't answer. Because I hadn't known. I had just chosen not to dismiss it. Behind the door I heard movement, slow, deliberate. The handle didn't turn. Instead, a voice came through the glass panel beside it. "Thomas." "Grandma." My father froze. Not completely, just enough for the anger to hesitate. "Ma, open the door," he said, trying to shift his tone, soften it just a fraction. "We need to talk about those checks." Silence. Then her voice again, steady as ever. "I gave each of you the same thing," she said, "the same chance." My father's patience snapped. "It was fake," he shouted. "You said it yourself." "I said they were fake," she replied. "There was a difference." "I heard it." "He didn't." "Yeah," he said, throwing his hands up. "Exactly. So stop wasting our time and—" "They were only fake," she continued, cutting through him like a blade for those who chose to believe they were. The air went still. Mark stopped moving. Even the wind seemed to pull back. My father stared at the door, confusion flashing across his face before anger filled the gap again. "What is that supposed to mean?" he demanded. "It means the test is over," she said. Her silhouette shifted behind the glass, small but unyielding. "The result is recorded." My father stepped forward, reaching for the handle. "Then open the door and fix it," he snapped. "Issue the checks. We'll do it right this time." There it was. Not regret. Not apology. Correction. Like it was a transaction he could redo. Before his hand touched the handle, there was a sound from inside. A small metallic click. The deadbolt. For as long as I could remember, that door had never been locked. Not once. It was a symbol more than anything else, a standing invitation, a belief that family didn't need barriers. That sound changed that. My father's hand froze in midair. "You've got to be kidding me," he said, his voice dropping into something darker. "I'm not," she replied. "You're locking me out," he demanded. "Your own son." "I'm closing a door you chose not to walk through," she said. The words landed harder than anything else that morning. Mark shifted behind him, uneasy now. "This is getting ridiculous," he muttered. "We're standing out here freezing." "Go home," she said simply. My father's face flushed deep red, the veins in his neck tightening like cords. "You think this is over?" he hissed, leaning closer to the glass. "You think you can just shut us out and that's it?" "It already is," she said. "No," he snapped. "No, you don't get to decide that. That money." "That money," she interrupted, "was never yours." Silence. Pure, crushing. I stepped closer to the door, not touching it, just standing within reach. "Grandma," I said, my voice controlled, "I'm here." "I know," she replied. There was something in her tone then, relief maybe, or confirmation. Stay where you are, she added. I didn't move. Behind me, my father let out a harsh laugh. This is unbelievable, he said. You're really going to stand there and take her side? I'm standing where I need to be, I answered. He turned on me fully now, anger redirecting, searching for a target it could actually reach. You think that uniform makes you untouchable, he said. You think you can just walk in here and take everything? I didn't take anything, I replied. You kept it, he shot back. Same difference. No, I said quietly, it's not. Mark stepped in again, more cautious this time. Look, we can work this out, he said, trying a different angle. We're all family. No need to turn this into a war. Too late. It already was. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, but I ignored it. Inside, I heard her footsteps moving away from the door. Check the perimeter, Evelyn, she said, her voice calm, almost routine. An order. I turned from the door without another word. My father shouted something after me, accusations, threats. I didn't bother parsing them. They blurred into noise. I stepped off the porch, scanning the yard automatically. Fence line, tree line, vehicle positions, entry points. Habit. But beneath that, something else settled into place. A shift in mission parameters. I hadn't come here to observe anymore. I had come here to hold the line. Behind me, my father pounded on the door again, but the sound didn't carry the same weight. Not anymore. The barrier was set. The boundary defined. For the first time in years, Grandma's house wasn't open. And for the first time, my family was on the outside. The wind picked up, cutting across the yard in sharp gusts, carrying the echo of his voice into the trees. I ignored it. Because in my world, once the perimeter is secured, you don't look back at the noise outside. You prepare for what's coming next. And something was coming. I could feel it. January didn't bring a reset. It brought weight. The kind that settles into the walls of a house and doesn't leave. Grandma's condition declined faster than I expected. Pancreatic cancer doesn't negotiate, and by the time the pain started showing through her movements, it was already too far along to fight. She had known before Thanksgiving. That much became clear in the way she managed everything: timing, precision, silence. She hadn't been giving out checks. She had been setting conditions. I moved in the week after Christmas. Not as a granddaughter, not even as a daughter. As a caretaker. The transition was immediate. The living room turned into a controlled space hospital bed against the wall, supplies lined up with the same precision I used for field kits. Medication logs, feeding schedule, temperature checks. Every variable tracked, recorded, adjusted. I ran that house like an operating base. There's a rhythm to care that most people don't understand. It's not emotional, not in the moment. It's procedural. You manage pain, maintain stability, prevent deterioration where you can. You act, you don't dwell. At night, when the house went quiet, except for the soft mechanical pulse of the oxygen machine, that's when the thoughts tried to push in. I didn't let them stay long. For 43 days I slept in a chair beside her bed. For 43 days no one else came. My father showed up once. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, like he was inspecting something that didn't meet his standards. He didn't step closer, didn't ask how she was doing. His eyes moved around the room, equipment, supplies, the changes I had made. You turned this place into a hospital, he said. It needed one, I replied. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable now, but not enough to engage. You still got that check, he asked. There it was. Not how is she not, do you need help? Just that. Yes, I said. His jaw tightened. You need to think about what you're doing, he said. This isn't just about you. No, I agreed, it never was. He stayed another minute, maybe 2. Then he left. He didn't come back. My mother didn't visit at all. She called sometimes. Not to check on Grandma, to ask questions. Is she still coherent? Did she mention anything about the accounts? You should really consider what's fair, Evelyn. Fair. I ended those calls quickly. Mark and Lily disappeared completely once the bank confirmed the funds weren't immediately accessible to them. Interest without return tends to fade fast. But silence doesn't last. 4 days after Grandma passed, it came. The envelope was thick, legal, delivered by a man who didn't make eye contact and didn't care what he was handing over. You've been served, he said before turning back to his car. I closed the door behind me and stood in the entryway, the house too quiet now. No oxygen machine, no footsteps, just stillness. I opened the envelope. Undue influence, coercion, manipulation of a vulnerable adult. My father's name was at the top. Mark's just beneath it. They weren't asking for a share. They were accusing me of theft. I read it once. Then again. Then I folded it neatly and set it on the table. In the army, when someone escalates to legal force, you don't respond emotionally. You respond with evidence. I made one call. Halvorsen, I said when he answered. I need access to everything she set up. He didn't hesitate. "Come in," he replied. The vault was colder than I expected. Banks aren't designed for comfort below ground. The air was dry metallic, stripped of anything human. Halverson led me past rows of safety deposit boxes, each one identical, each one holding someone's version of security. "Box 27, he said. He stepped back. I took the key from my pocket. The same one Grandma had pressed into my hand 2 days before she died. When the lawyer calls, she had whispered, her voice barely there, "You give it to him. Only him." I had nodded. Mission accepted. Now I slid the key into the lock. The click was soft, but it carried. I pulled the drawer open. No cash, no jewelry. Documents. Stacks of them bound neatly labeled with dates. Halverson exhaled slowly. "She prepared," he said. I picked up the first file. Medical evaluations. 3 separate doctors, different cities, independent assessments. Each one stamped with the same conclusion. Patient is of sound mind, fully competent, no evidence of coercion. Dates aligned with the will. Weeks before. Days after. Precision. She had anticipated the attack. The next file, financial records. Every receipt for the last 6 months. Medication, equipment, private care supplies. Paid in full. From my account. I flipped through them, each line item a confirmation of what I already knew. Then Halverson handed me another folder. "Your family's statements," he said quietly. I opened it. Golf clubs, $3,000. Casino withdrawals, repeated. Spa memberships, high-end retail. While I was logging medication times at 3 in the morning, they had been spending money they assumed would be replaced. I set the folder down. There was one item left in the box. A journal. Blue leather, worn at the edges. The cover creased from years of handling. I opened it. Her handwriting was sharp, controlled. Entry after entry. Dates. Notes. Evelyn came today. Fixed the sink. Didn't ask for anything. Thomas called. Wanted money. Didn't ask how I was. Mark took cash from the drawer again. Lily visited. Spent more time on her phone than speaking. Page after page. A record. Not emotional, not exaggerated. Just facts. A decade of them. I closed the journal slowly. This wasn't a diary. This was testimony. Pre-recorded, verified, unarguable. They think they're walking into a courtroom, I said. Halverson looked at me. Aren't they? No, I replied. They're walking into a report. The hearing was set for early March. County courthouse, small room, limited audience. My father sat across from me dressed in a suit that didn't fit right, his posture stiff with forced confidence. Mark beside him, less composed, eyes moving constantly. Their lawyer spoke first. Smooth, practiced. Captain Ross, he began pacing slowly. You were absent for long periods of time due to your military service, yet you expect this court to believe that your grandmother entrusted you with her entire estate. I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence sit. I showed up, I said finally. He smiled slightly, occasionally. Consistently, I corrected. Halverson's lawyer stood then. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. He placed the files on the table. Medical evaluations, financial records, the journal. The judge read in silence. Time stretched. Then she looked up. Not at me. At my father. Case dismissed, she said. The gavel came down. Sharp. Final. With prejudice. My father's face drained of color. Mark stared at the table like it had betrayed him. I stood. No celebration, no reaction. Just movement. As I walked past them, my father grabbed my arm. You think this is over? He hissed. I looked at his hand. Then at him. It was over, I said the moment you laughed. I pulled free and walked out. Behind me, the courtroom erupted not in noise but in consequence. They hadn't just lost the case. They had exposed themselves, and in a town like Pine Hollow that sticks. I stepped outside into the cold air. Clear, sharp, controlled. The war wasn't loud. It never is. It's quiet. Precise. And by the time the other side realizes they've lost, it's already finished. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It moved the way winter breaks in Pine Hollow, slow, quiet, and then suddenly everywhere. 4 days after the hearing, the Gazette ran a front-page story. Not sensational, not loud, just facts laid out in black ink. Local family dispute over estate dismissed, court cites evidence of neglect. It didn't name everything, but it named enough. In a town where everyone already knows the rest, that was more than sufficient. My father lost his job the following Monday. Officially, it was restructuring. Unofficially, no company wants a supervisor who sues his dying mother and loses on the record. Reputation in small towns isn't a metric, it's currency. Once it drops below a certain threshold, no one extends credit. Mark's construction line of credit was pulled within the week. The bank doesn't like risk, and a pending judgment for legal fees looks a lot like a sinkhole. He tried to keep the crews on, tried to juggle invoices and promises, but you can't build on debt that's already collapsing. By mid-month, the equipment was gone, leased out to cover what he owed. The yard sat empty. Lily's collapse was faster. During discovery, her spending history surfaced credit cards, stretched thin brand deals built on a curated image that didn't survive public scrutiny. The video from Thanksgiving, the one where she laughed as the check burned, circulated in the wrong circles. Not viral in the way she wanted. Viral in the way that closes doors. Comments shifted tone. Sponsors withdrew. Her numbers didn't crash overnight. They bled out slow and public. My mother retreated into silence. The calls stopped. The texts ended. In their place came distance, physical, social, deliberate. Pine Hollow doesn't exile people openly. It just stops making room for them. I didn't celebrate any of it. In my world, outcomes are logged, not cheered. 2 weeks after the hearing, I returned to the house on the hill. Snowmelt had started revealing patches of dead grass beneath. The porch boards creaked the same way they always had. Inside, the air was different now, cleaner. Not empty, cleared. I moved through the rooms methodically, not as a daughter searching for comfort, but as an officer conducting a final sweep. Cabinets checked, documents filed, utilities transferred, loose ends tied down. In the kitchen, I found the tin box behind the flour container. I'd seen her reach for it 100 times over the years, never asked what was inside. Now I opened it. A photograph, old edges worn. My grandmother in her 30s standing beside a small storefront with a hand-painted sign. She wasn't smiling. She looked focused, like she was building something that didn't need applause. Beneath it, a folded map of a coastal town in Maine. Names I didn't recognize. Marked routes in pen. Notes in the margins, dates, short phrases, amounts. Another layer. I set the items back carefully. Some things aren't meant to be resolved immediately. Some are meant to be carried forward. Outside, the wind shifted. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. The yard stretched out quiet and wide, the tree line marking the edge of what this place had always been, contained self-sufficient honest, in a way the rest of the world rarely is. A truck engine approached from the road. I didn't turn right away. I listened, first speed cadence, the slight misfire in the idle. My father. He pulled into the driveway without hesitation, stopping closer to the house than he used to, like proximity might compensate for everything else he'd lost. He stepped out slower than I remembered. Not weak, just heavier. The kind of weight that doesn't show on the surface until it does. We stood facing each other across the gravel. No audience, no lawyer, no judge. Just distance. "You look good," he said, finally, voice rough around the edges. I didn't answer that. "What do you want?" I asked. He let out a short breath, glanced toward the house, then back at me. "We need to talk," he said. "We did," I replied, "in court." His jaw tightened. "That wasn't talking, that was you, setting me up." I held his gaze. "You set yourself up," I said. He shook his head, frustration rising. "Don't do that. Don't twist it like I'm the only one who made mistakes. We're family. We should have handled this differently." "We had years to handle it differently," I said. "We didn't." He took a step closer. I lost everything, he said, the words coming out sharper than he intended. "No," I replied, steady. "You spent everything." That landed. He looked away for a second, then back. "You think you're better than me now?" he asked. "I think I made different choices," I said. He laughed, but it didn't hold. "You kept that check," he said. "That's the difference." "No," I said quietly. "I kept showing up." Silence. The kind that doesn't need to be filled. He ran a hand over his face, eyes scanning the yard like he was trying to locate something that wasn't there anymore. "She was my mother," he said. "I know," I replied. "And he stopped, recalibrated. You shut me out." "I followed her instructions," I said, the same way I followed mine. He studied me, then really looked, maybe for the first time in a long while. "You don't feel anything about this?" he asked. "About what happened to us?" I considered that. In the army, you don't ignore emotion. You compartmentalize it. You assign it a place where it doesn't interfere with execution. "I feel exactly what I need to feel," I said. He shook his head again, a small defeated motion. "Cold," he muttered. "Controlled," I corrected. Another pause. Wind moved through the trees, carrying the faint sound of something distant, traffic maybe, or just the town continuing without us. "I can't fix it," he said almost to himself. "No," I agreed, "you can't." He looked at me one last time, searching for something, permission, forgiveness, a different outcome. I didn't give him any of those. What I gave him was truth. You think I won because of the money? I said. I didn't. He frowned slightly. You lost, I continued, the moment you decided she had nothing left to give. He didn't argue. There was nothing left to argue with. After a moment he nodded once short tight and turned back toward his truck. He didn't look back when he drove away. I stood there until the sound of the engine disappeared completely. Then I went back inside. The house didn't feel empty. It felt settled. I walked into the kitchen, set a pot on the stove, and filled it with water. Simple task, measured, repeatable, the kind that keeps your hands moving while your mind aligns with what comes next. On the counter, the folded map sat where I had left it. Mine. Coordinates, notes, routes. A continuation. I placed my hand over it, not opening it yet, just acknowledging it. The mission wasn't over. It had just changed. I turned off the stove before the water reached a full boil. No need to rush. Outside, the sky cleared for the first time in days, a thin line of sunlight breaking through the clouds and stretching across the yard. I watched it for a moment, then reached for my jacket. If you've ever been the one who stayed when everyone else left, if you've ever done the work no one saw while others waited for the reward, then you already understand how this ends. It doesn't end with applause. It ends with clarity. If this story meant something to you, I want to hear it. Tell me where you're listening from and what you would have done in my place. There are more stories like this, real ones, quiet ones that don't always get told out loud. Subscribe if you want to keep walking through them with me. We're just getting started.